Let's jump right in. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to decode the incredible biology behind the menstrual cycle. And, just as importantly, we're going to dismantle the myths that have surrounded it for literal centuries. We're drawing from Dr. Jen Gunter's really masterful book, Blood, to basically replace all that outdated patriarchal mythology with some genuine biological awe. Okay, get this. Here's a staggering biological statistic to set the stage for our entire journey today. Only 2% of mammals on Earth actually menstruate. 2%. We share this incredibly rare trait with most other primates, a few species of bats, the elephant shrew, and the spiny mouse. But your everyday placental mammals, dogs, horses, cats, they simply do not menstruate. Now, you might be wondering, considering how metabolically taxing and, frankly, messy it is, why on earth did humans evolve to be part of this super exclusive 2% club? Because reproducing a human is a massive biological effort. I mean, we walk upright, right? Which means a smaller pelvis, which makes birth physically challenging, and our infants require immense metabolic care. Evolution doesn't usually favor wasting resources like blood and energy, so there has to be a profound reason for this. So, here's our roadmap to figure this out. We're going to cover 1. The evolutionary secret, 2. The brain-ovary connection, 3. The uterine marvel, and 4. Busting menstrual mess. Let's start with Section 1, the evolutionary secret, decoding spontaneous decidualization. Right, so to really understand menstruation, we first need to define a fairly heavy medical term, and that is decidualization. Basically, this is the irreversible biological transformation of the uterine lining. It literally fills the cells with nutrients and storage sugars to support a potential embryo until a placenta can take over. Plus, it protects the embryo from the pregnant person's own immune system. Without this incredibly complex step, human pregnancy is just flat out impossible. To really picture the difference between us and the other 98% of mammals, think of it kind of like baking a souffle. Most mammals experience estrus, which means induced decidualization. They only bake the souffle or transform the uterus when the guest, meaning the embryo, actually arrives at the door. But humans? We have spontaneous decidualization. We spontaneously bake a highly complex souffle every single cycle, whether a guest shows up or not. And because that biological change is a one-way street, if no guest arrives, well, we have to clean out the dish. And that cleanup process, that's menstruation. So why did humans evolve to constantly pre-bake the souffle and deal with all the cleanup? Well, first, it manages our uniquely invasive human placentas. The human placenta burrows super aggressively for nutrients, and a thick, decidualized lining acts as a necessary defense to stop it from invading too deeply and damaging the uterus. Second, it acts as a really strict biosensor. Since human embryos have a pretty high rate of genetic anomalies, this pre-baked lining basically tests the embryo's fitness. It prevents the body from wasting massive resources on a non-viable pregnancy. Moving right along to Section 2, the brain-ovary connection, the menstrual metronome. Okay, imagine this whole process as a high-stakes biological relay race. Step 1, a metronome deep inside your brain's hypothalamus taps out this chemical Morse code called GnRH in very distinct pulses. Step 2, the signal tells your pituitary gland to release the hormones FSH and LH. And finally, Step 3, those hormones travel all the way down to your ovaries, ordering them to mature eggs and pump out estrogen and progesterone. It's this ancient, incredibly robust communication superhighway that dictates your entire cycle. Think of the endometrium, the lining, as a brick wall. Each brick is a cell, and estrogen acts as the master bricklayer, rapidly building up that wall. Then, these coiled blood vessels grow up from the base layer, kind of weaving through the bricks like ivy. Finally, progesterone acts as the mortar. It stabilizes the wall and triggers that final decidualization process we just talked about. All right, on to Section 3, the uterine marvel, engineering the endometrium. Think about this crazy number for a second. Upwards of 400 times in a human lifetime, the uterus will shed its functional lining, expose raw blood vessels, and then heal itself entirely without a single scar. It's like severely skinning your knee over and over and over again, yet it heals perfectly, flawlessly every single time. It's an absolute regenerative marvel. And to stop the bleeding after that lining sheds, the smooth muscle layers have to generate a staggering 200 millimeters of mercury in pressure just to clamp down on those blood vessels. To put that into perspective, that is literally equal to the immense, painful pressure of active labor contractions. No wonder menstrual cramps can hurt so incredibly much. Yet, despite all that extreme internal pressure, and despite the visual volume you might notice, the maximum upper limit of medically normal blood loss for an entire cycle is just 80 milliliters. That's roughly 2.7 ounces. You see, it takes very little blood mixed in water to look like a massive amount, but your body is actually remarkably efficient at shutting down the flow. Because what we casually call period blood isn't actually just blood. It's a 50-50 mix. Half is blood, sure, but the other half is a combination of cervical mucus, natural inflammatory fluid, and stem cells from the endometrium. Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, Busting Menstrual Myths, Science over Stigma. Let's tackle the 28-day cycle first. The idea that a perfect, healthy cycle has to be exactly 28 days, that is pure Victorian gaslighting, seriously. 19th century doctors just preferred rigid, neat conformity over messy biological reality. So they essentially mandated a 28-day standard that simply isn't true for most people. But unfortunately, that myth just stuck around. The actual reality of the cycle, which is heavily backed by modern tracking apps and hormone studies, is so much broader. A medically normal cycle can range anywhere from 24 to 38 days. On top of that, up to a 7-day variation between your own cycles is completely typical. The heaviest bleeding usually happens on day 2, and cycle lengths naturally shift as you age. Understanding this is absolutely crucial because it means you won't get scammed by some wellness influencer selling a $30 hormone balancing smoothie that claims to fix your perfectly normal timeline. Now let's talk about another pervasive myth, menstrual cycle syncing. Biologically speaking, the idea that your periods magically align when you live with someone else, it's impossible. Remember that ancient brain metronome, that GnRH pulse we talked about? It doesn't just change its chemical Morse code because of someone else's hormones or physical proximity. Humans don't even have the functional organ required to detect pheromones. Syncing is literally just statistical probability and selective memory. If you have varying cycle lengths, you're just bound to overlap eventually. We also really need to call out the patriarchal nonsense around menstrual blood color and odor. There's this myth that blood color indicates hormone health. The scientific fact, color simply shows how long the blood was exposed to oxygen. It's just iron oxidization turning it darker. There's also the myth that period blood is toxic or foul-smelling. The fact is, blood just smells like metallic iron. These odor myths are deeply rooted in historical patriarchal control, specifically designed to make people feel impure. And that's exactly what the modern wellness industrial complex preys on, to sell you scented washes you absolutely do not need. To wrap up, I want to leave you with a quote. Menstruation is the only scarless healing in the human body. When you really understand the sheer complexity of this process, from that intricate brain-ovary connection to the intense, absolute power of the uterus, it leaves us not with a curse, but with a profound evolutionary marvel. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. And it really makes you wonder, if our bodies can go through this immense, scarless regeneration every single month, what other incredible biological superpowers are we completely misunderstanding just because of outdated stigma?